Now that we're about 3 weeks out from the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer, what are my thoughts? Let's find out on day 2 of DAMSC 2. That's right, if you sleuths weren't aware. Part of the branding or something for DAMSC involves using the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer background music, at the very end at least. We are here to discuss what are my thoughts now that this trailer has been out for a little while, what are my concerns, and what are my desires for the future. But before I dive straight into the trailer, what are my general sort of thoughts coming into this 4th numbered installment in the series? Well, a few things. One, we're starting a new arc slash phase or something. Some fucking innocuous fucking bullshit marketing term that Nomura probably made up. In this trailer, we see him in Quadratum, which is this world that we were sort of hinted at since the ending of, I believe, Kingdom Hearts 3. This is where Sora ended up. That's kind of where we are, starting the Lost Masters arc. Supposedly, we're gonna dive into the story and the characters of the Lost Masters from Union Cross. So those are kind of our new antagonists, if you guys recall. There's a new chess match that was at the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, and that has led to this current arc right now. Now that I gave that rough sort of background, what are my thoughts? What are my personal thoughts on this? I'm genuinely sort of err on the side of optimism with Square still. That's kind of a theme that stayed true from about 2 years ago, funnily enough. Kingdom Hearts' slate is a little cleaner, as many of others have pointed out, and this is kind of a chance to pull out something, another sort of Kingdom Hearts 2, or something akin to that, especially if this game manages to come out fairly fast, and it doesn't take 13 years, let's just say. In some ways good, and in some ways bad, it seems like Nomura and the gang are listening to fan feedback, sometimes to his detriment, and sometimes to, actually making a better game. Supposedly some form of reaction commands are coming back, and Nomura stated himself that he likes to listen to fan opinion on stuff if he's unsure. Sometimes that can lead to good things, like supposedly reaction commands coming back, and it can lead to not as good things, such as how a lot of people feel that Roxas and Xion should have never come back or never been saved, etc. I digress. There's been a lot of debate about that. Now, with all that pre-fucking information out of the way, let's get into what actually happens in the trailer, and if applicable, what are my thoughts on what happens. Now, the trailer starts very clearly pointing out that we are in a new arc, like I said before, with some dialogue from what I believe to be a young Xehanort, if I'm not mistaken, or Luxu, or someone, one of those two. But regardless, this dialogue points out, I believe, two things. One sort of hinting towards maybe you lost to Yozora at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, so that's something interesting to consider. Then after that, it's just kind of like a cryptic, Kingdom Heartsy fartsy fucking Nomura quote, some shit about the heart and the soul, and all of that is over, nice high rendered environmental footage. And what leads into what may be one of the more interesting things in the trailer, whether or not it was intentional, to be quite honest, is unsure, but as many have pointed out, what seems to be the foot of an AT-ST in one of the scenes. Pretty obvious by all means. Now, in all likelihood, I want to say that this is pretty intentional. Something kind of Easter eggy that kind of would hype up or drive the discussion around this kind of nothing burger of a trailer a little more. The only reason I kind of use an abrasive term like nothing burger of a trailer, really, by the way, I want to say it was confirmed in a later interview and translated as an answer from Nomura, that because of the way that they're developing the game, and the fact that all their footage was rendered on UE4, and the game is gonna actually be made / transferred to UE5, means that it was, quote, all the footage in the trailer was to be scrapped. In addition to the fact that this obviously isn't like a gameplay trailer, that it was all sort of pre-rendered cutscenes and sequences and whatnot. Taking the first trailer for this with a large grain of salt is very advised, I would say. Akin to Kingdom Hearts 3's first trailer, which kind of had a similar, this was nothing what it ended up really looking like, right? And, that kind of thing. But obviously I'm sidetracking a lot here. I'm not really talking about the elephant in the room, so to speak. Star Wars in Kingdom Hearts. What is my thoughts on that? Well, if you didn't already know or could tell from the amount of things that have been filmed in my room, I do still like Star Wars. So obviously I would be kind of pogged out of my gourd, soy jack, king fucking mode, etc., for this kind of collaboration. Obviously very similar basic / baseline themes kind of persist throughout the two series, and I would say that these two series are a pretty damn good fit for each other in all reality. People have even themselves modded Kingdom Hearts 3 now that it's on PC to have I saw a funny recommended video in my feed that was like Darth Vader reskinned as the Xemnas fight. I didn't end up watching that video, but obviously pretty cool concept, right? And I think that's something that people are like unironically looking forward to, and would be a pretty great idea, to be quite honest, is something akin to a like Darth Vader boss fight, depending on when we're dropped in the Star Wars timeline, which seems to suggest from the original ATST foot / environment that we're probably on Endor, as many have theorized. It is unlikely with the kind of foresty terrain / waterfall that people have pointed out that it is anywhere else. I think it's very unlikely. Something like Kashyyyk wouldn't exactly make sense. Other foresty planets, probably not as iconic. The ATST is kind of infamous for being on Endor from episode 6, so that's probably the case in that regard. Excuse me. The next scene after that transitions to the chessboard from Kingdom Hearts 3 with only one piece on it. That being the one with the crown / Sora's. And then after that we transition to finally a scene with Sora, so we finally see his Kingdom Hearts 4 design. The reason I just triple air quoted that is because this is Sora in Quadratum. And there was kind of a big hullabaloo when the trailer released in the days coming after the trailer, kind of raging at Nomura and this and that about how changing Sora's design is so bad. He looks way too realistic. What happened to my anime boy? Etc. And we will come back to that later. Let's just say we'll put that on pause for now. Then we go from Sora waking up in an apartment to him meeting a strange auburn-haired girl named Strelitzia, who, funnily enough, if you've played every Kingdom Hearts game, main game that is, you probably would still have no idea who this character even is, which is pretty funny. But Strelitzia is Marluxia, or Lorium rather, it's his sister. And this was explained in Union Cross, that this is a character that exists and was kind of crucial to the latter portion of its plot, as they were murdered by a possessed Ventus. So that is kind of an ongoing plot thread at this point, in addition to the fact that, insanely enough, there was like also white coats introduced. Like, how Kingdom Hearts, it's like Kingdom Hearts, A Chain of Memories /2 and beyond, everyone, all the evil bad guys, most of them, have like black leather coats, and oh my god, it's so cool. And then out of fuck nowhere, here comes, in the mobile game, this bitch rising with a white fucking coat of the same design, but white, to just confuse the fan base into oblivion, let's just say. We're going to need to figure out so many things. How is this character alive? Where are we? What are we doing? What's happening? They commented right after this on how this is like some sort of like afterlife world for them specifically. So for like Sora and Strelitzia, they're just like somewhere else, but here it's really confusing. But that's what Kingdom Hearts is, right? We don't know jack shit. The game is not out, and that was only the first trailer. Harking back to what I said at the beginning of this during the trailer, there's kind of a ongoing question that is kind of under some debate. I may need to do more personal research on, but Strelitzia says Sora has, quote, been asleep for 7 days, or something along those lines. And that's kind of a interesting thing to note, because that is more than likely this like weird gap week thing in the timeline that I believe occurred in Melody of Memory, if I'm not mistaken. Because there was some weird shit like 1 year passed, and then also 1 week passed. It was like 1 week and then 1 year, 1 year, then 1 week. The timeline is honestly kind of confusing, but it'll be ironed out by folks, or may already have been. I personally did not play Melody of Memory / am paying like the most attention to the time structure of this series, as it kind of is all over the place, as you can tell. But like I said before, this kind of relates to question before of, did Sora really beat Yozora? What was young Xehanort's dialogue referring to? If this isn't the ending you desired, did you lose to Yozora? Did you beat him? Because you fell asleep, does that mean you lost to him? Or does that mean you beat him and then fell asleep? There's kind of a lot of theories about this that I will probably remark more on in a section soon to be. Now, after Strelitzia has some dialogue commenting on some things and says this is Quadratum, we kind of move to a scene of like a dark side spawning in. But it looks a little different. It looks kind of more to the ones at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, the supposed like secret boss or whatever. It kind of looks more like that, in that vein of Heartless, right? So it's not your typical dark side that's kind of like featureless and has like the tangled hair. It's a little more like devilish in a weird way. It's actually got like a mouth and fucking teeth and spikes and shit, and some like wings that pop out the back. But that's kind of the initial, it seems to be at least sort of the initial boss or something of the game, which will be interesting to see. So upon this fucking creature just spawning in out of nowhere from all these like little darkness particles like forming together and shit, it just starts like fucking up the town. Like lifting cars and like, I almost want to say seemingly killing people, but it's Kingdom Hearts, so more than likely not. Even though this may be like a more serious like tone shift or something, since this is like a new arc and whatnot, it's honestly hard to tell. But upon this creature fucking shit up, we see an anime boy running in the kind of classic fucking Sora sprint that it really is. That leads into a clearly like a sequence that's like pretty, you know, I want to say like robotic, because it's definitely like more of like a cinematic, like it doesn't look like gameplay, even though you have like a HUD and stuff, which by the way is still missing the based 2D Nomura art. What the fuck? You gotta listen to us on that one, Nomura, at least, come on. But it kind of goes through this sequence of Sora kind of getting up to the creature, who is extremely tall, by the way. You know, in that sort of typical dark side fashion. There is kind of a sequence of what seems to be some kind of mix of like maybe some gameplay / reaction commands, question mark? I have no idea. It's an interesting kind of, it must be a scripted scene. There's just like no other way to explain it, because he does some interesting stuff that like looks kind of like flow motion, then he like jumps up on some fucking pole, and then whips out this like insane like yellow train shit, which does look badass, which kind of in a really cool way plays on that sort of theme from Kingdom Hearts 2 of like stealing your enemy's moves, as in maybe Sora learned from Master Xehanort, and or him getting like the Keyblade handed down to him was kind of a facilitation for like new powers to unlock. And maybe Sora was kind of like inspired by Master Xehanort in that regard, because he fucking whips out this chain and latches onto like a car and like pulls himself towards it. The only sort of like maybe unfortunate thing in the design aspect is that it's not his keychain that like extends to the car. If you look closely and slow it down, you see that his keychain is still like there, and it's like a separate thing. That's kind of like a weird kind of design thing that like seems like it would be like a really simple thing, but maybe not. I have no idea. I'm not a game designer after all. But like I said, still pretty cool, sort of like thematic thing of how like kind of a mixture really of how Sora learning from his enemies and sort of using their moves. That's kind of like a cool thing, and also the Keyblade sort of transforming really, sort of a theme that kind of at the beginning, not at the beginning, but in Kingdom Hearts 2 has also been sort of guided to this game, hopefully. Now, another quick remark on something about the gameplay before we move forward is the command deck, as people have translated attack, magic, items, and birudo, or build. That is interesting and somewhat concerning for what should be very obvious reasons. I sure hope there is no Fortnite crossover happening, and never will. Here's my vow: if Kingdom Hearts ever does some sort of crossover or collaboration with Fortnite, I will think less of the series, just a little bit, but I will always think less of the series going forward. Because I hate Fortnite. My god. After that sequence, we kind of cut to what seems to be some kind or some variation of flow motion yet again, where we see some kind of particle effects when Sora hits a building and then starts running up it, which seems to be fairly consistent with kind of how 3 was. So that seems okay, and kind of gives me a little more hope that what we're seeing kind of is at least a little bit more true gameplay. But after that, he jumps off the building into this like section that the dark side pulled, and was like, I assume like shoving at him or something, but it was like a hollow rectangular prism, right? And then Sora just kind of like goes through it in like a pretty seemingly heavy like scripted sequence. It looked like cool, like maybe, you know, in a game sense there was like a lot going on there, like glass was like breaking and shattering and shit. But then after that comes like a really fucking funny moment, to be quite honest, where there seems to be like some variation of a reaction command as Sora starts like setting up like a defensive like sort of stance or something, as the dark side is like throwing a punch at him. Sora blocks it, and then well, like after this reaction command, and there's like a little crown symbol, and then all the particles like effects start to like twirl like right as he's about to do this reaction command. And when he defends from the punch, he's like spinning his Keyblade or some shit, and it's all like coming off into this spiral. Wink wink nudge nudge, you know where this is going. And he defends from this attack and starts swirling all the energy, and like the camera like zooms back out. And my boy literally does a fucking Giga Turir Breaker against this motherfucker, and he like shoots it at the dark side, and that was sick. Unironically, made me coom, made me soyjack, etc., etc. This is actually where whoever is speaking says that if you leave this world behind, you won't be able to return or some shit. So like, the dark side throws some punches, and then the camera pans up a building to where we see two dark cloaked figures, classic Kingdom Hearts style, where what we assume is to be the Master of Masters and Lucio. And then after that dialogue is stated, that says Sora can't come back, bro. You cannot return from whence you came. And after it pans up to those two figures, it fades out with an epic musical flourish into the Kingdom Hearts 4 logo. Now this alone has fucking caused controversy, unbelievably enough, because, you know, of this new arc that we're in. The Kingdom Hearts font has changed and has gone out the window. Congratulations for all those who complained, because the font has been changed. It is now a lot simpler and a little, I want to say wider and more bold overall. Easier to read, but the logo does look pretty damn new. This, of course, like I said, to represent a new arc. That was kind of the stated reasoning for this change, among many other things. Also, our funny design thing, at least the Roman, oh my god, at least the Roman numerals are still the same, but except now we're on 4, so instead of, you know, I, we're on IV, baby. That is where we are with the Kingdom Hearts logo. In addition to the font changes, in an overall, I want to say, bleaker look. There's no sort of alternate color in the other numbered installments, at least. In 1s, 2s, and 3s, I believe there is some semblance of blue, if I am not mistaken, but otherwise I will correct myself on screen / in post. Now, but with Kingdom Hearts 4, we only have whites, grays, and blacks, it seems. So this honestly provides in itself an interesting question as well. And this honestly may support my crackpot theory for this as well. That being that if we lost to Yozora, or maybe if we won, it kind of supports either or, but is this really Sora? There's kind of a couple of reasons that we can ask this question, because there was no mention of Yozora in this trailer. What happened to him? Where is he? Is he in this world? Is he not in this world? Which kind of makes me think, did we absorb Yozora? Or did we go into Yozora's heart? Because one thing about Sora's design in this trailer is that he looks a lot older and he looks more like Yozora. Now, this could just all be bullshit, and I'd be totally fine with that. But hey, it's just a theory. Like, it's just a theory I have. He looks a lot more like that Riku, Virum Rexy / Final Fantasy kind of archetype, really. Even though his hair does look a little different, it looks flatter. If you'll notice in the 20th anniversary promotional art, his design, it just looks more, I want to say, Yozora-like. Who knows? It's just kind of a crackpot theory. Could be the truth, could not. No idea, take it with a grain of salt. But that is one thing to consider. And a lot of people, like I said, complaining about his design. Nomura had to, I don't know if he had to, but he was probably asked in a later interview, I want to say. Might have been the Famitsu one, might have been a different one. But the whole reason for the very ending of the trailer, after the logo, there was a cutscene with Donald and Goofy looking for Hades. And the point of this cutscene, as stated by Nomura himself, was to show that the sort of classic Kingdom Heartsy design is still present, is still kind of the, design, really. Or the style, rather. That just kind of plays more into the fact, like I may have said earlier, that, don't be too mad at Sora's new design, new arc, and, this specific world, he looks more realistic to fit with the world. As stated by Nomura, it's fucking confirmed, you can read about it all you want, but, that's just the truth. And we'll probably see when another trailer comes out. But yeah, there's a lot of other generic sort of theming stuff that a lot of other people have already pointed out. Donald and Goofy going to see Hades, Lord of the Dead, probably to see if he can find Sora, where he went, if they know of a way to quadrat him that they'll probably figure out in some way. But who knows? I think despite various concerns that I may have personally, I'm still optimistic, I would say. I'd still say that I'm optimistic for Kingdom Hearts 4, whatever they plan to do. They definitely have a cleaner slate and more opportunity that I think will be more similar to 2. They could probably find interesting ways and curveballs to maybe get a Kingdom Hearts game along those lines. I would say maybe as good as 2. That would be very difficult, but it would be amazing if we had things like critical mode on release and that kind of thing, and it just was a good, complete game. Hopefully 99 save slots, very unlikely in that regard, I want to say. But if this game is released for next-gen consoles, maybe that is a possibility. I honestly have no idea how that would work. Very, very interested to see where they go with this, and will they answer the why question, man? Where's Yozora? What was he doing? Why was he not in the trailer? What the fuck?